Look, from the Albany Empire point of view, the Albany Empire was one of the last six remaining teams from the Arena Football League, which was the original arena football that came up, in the 80s, the test season in 86, and then started legitimately in 87, ran more or less continually until 2019, except they did go belly up after the 2008 season, then had to reorganize. The Albany Empire has been a good team and has been a good team recently. So it took something.
They won the last ever AFL championship in 2019, but they also finished first in 2018, but they lost in the playoff. And then they moved over after a year off. They moved to the NAL where they won back-to-back championships to start, and then were terminated 7 games into this season and never got to finish under Antonio Brown.
Right. They're the defending champs, and Antonio Brown basically killed them in 2 months.
By the way, they were 1-6 under Antonio Brown's ownership. So maybe putting out of the misery would be the way to describe it. They lost 5 games in the previous 2 seasons combined.
Yeah, they, which, by the way, there are some pretty significant Midwest ties to arena football in general. The original test game for the arena football concept was in Rockford, Illinois, between two just kind of arbitrarily created teams that called the Rockford Metros and the Chicago Politicians. Why they came up with Chicago Politicians, I don't know. And then they held another game at the Rosemont Horizon.
I used to go there.
They invited ESPN to the game, and they didn't air the whole game, but they did air a highlights package. The Rosemont Horizon is in, I believe, the northern suburbs of
Northwest, yeah.
Chicago.
Northwest suburbs. Out and off the blue line near O'Hare, on the way to O'Hare.
Maybe some of our Steelers fans will remember the Pittsburgh Gladiators, who were a founding member of the Arena Football League, along with the Denver Dynamite, Washington Commandos, and Chicago Bruisers. So the first regular game was at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena. You could make a credible case that the birthplace of arena football is shared between Pittsburgh and Chicago. The first true dynasty being the Detroit Drive, who were highly successful playing in Joe Louis Arena, the first sports team owned by the Illiches. Back before anybody knew who they were, before they bought the Red Wings and before they bought the Tigers. They owned the Detroit Drive, and they won like crazy. The Drive went to the Arena Bowl every single year of their existence, 88 to 93. They were a fairly big deal around Detroit at that time. But then after Mike Ilitch bought the Tigers, he sold the AFL team. So the Drive moved to Massachusetts. The All-Star game, the first All-Star game was in Des Moines, Iowa, the future home of the Iowa Barnstormers, a famous team because that was Kurt Warner's team, where
Oh, I
he
was gonna say that.
managed to get
Yeah.
out of football obscurity.
What did he
A lot
do
of,
after he left the AFL? I don't know that guy. He only like what won a Super Bowl and went to 2 or 3.
I think he ended up in the Hall of Fame. There's a
Yeah,
movie about him.
yeah. 2 Super Bowl appearances with the Rams, one championship, and it even took the Cardinals to a Super Bowl when they lost to the Steelers.
Yeah, but the Rams, when they were in St. Louis, which you can make a pretty good case as the Midwest. I don't know if we've got any too many listeners there, but
If they were still St. Louis Rams, we would be covering them, but they went to soulless West Coast LA, so they're no longer Midwest Landers. Sorry, LA people, if you're listening. The people listening are probably transplant from the Midwest, anyways.
yes, everybody loves LA. Well, no, they don't necessarily love LA. They just want LA to send money. But
The
um,
idea.
but yeah, I mean, it's not like this was some fledgling team that Antonio Brown bought on a whim and it didn't work out. This was a team with a tradition of winning in a league that had been around for a while. And he might have bought it on a whim. I don't know.
I think he does everything on a whim, to be honest. So
This is Joe Smith from the Midwest Football Podcast. Please remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It all helps us grow our show.
Look for our full show, too, anywhere you find podcasts. Links below.